Hello everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and today we dive back into the zone in Stalker, the board game from Awaken Realms. We're going to pick things up exactly where we left it off in the last video. If you haven't checked out part number 1 or my setup video or even the prototype unboxing, I'll put a link to the entire playlist in the top right hand corner so you can get caught up to where we are right now. During part number 1, we went over line of sight as well as range, and I took out the terrain for that first video. Did this specifically so you can more easily see how the AI is resolved as well as how my Stalker turns are resolved. But at this point, now that we have a great understanding from part number 1 as to how that operates, we're going to add the terrain into the mix, which is really going to not only bump up the immersion, but also make the idea of drawing line of sight and range much easier to decipher, in my opinion. Here's a look at mission number 1 with all the terrain added into the equation. And the other benefit you'll see there is you've also got some miniatures in the form of terrain as well. I have a big pile of crates and barrels way up north. They're kind of looking like they're blocking off a path north. And then we've got one over here on the right. We also have some barrels placed where barrels are depicted on the tiles. The final thing I'll say about the terrain is that when I used it off camera as well as on camera, once I started using it, I didn't want to go back. Let's begin a brand new round of gameplay. We're going to start off by refreshing our action tokens, which I've already gone ahead and done. At this point, we're going to read the left-hand side of the campaign booklet.
Alarming sounds. Thunder cracks through the morning air. Nearby bushes rustle and wave as something makes its way through them. Too small for a human. Too fast to be ignored. I hear low, muffled growling. Shivers run down my spine. What? Could this be a Snork? Did the coming emission startle those hideous beasts out of their hideout?
And as you can clearly see, the zone has thrown something at us. We have Snorks. It says to take card E15A, place it on the map, and E16A and resolve it. E15A is going to change the terrain in this location. The environment card has been overlaid on the game tile and has brought in an exclamation mark. It tells us to go ahead and draw card A03 from the enemy deck, place it next to the map, and then place a Snork model on the exclamation mark as shown facing west, and it gains Overwatch. An agitated Snork now enters the scene. Comes in with a movement of 3 to hit its head, 7 successes are needed. To hit its torso, 3 successes are needed. It also shows its attack, which is a jump, which is an after effect after the attack. Again, we haven't got much into attacking just yet because I've been able to stay silent, but things are going to change real quick. An Overwatch token is placed on the Snork, and again, worth mentioning, as I did in part number 1, bandits and Snorks, although enemies of the Stalker, are not considered friendly to each other. So there can be a lot of fun to be had in terms of infighting amongst the enemies when a Snork shows up on scene. Now we're moving into the player phase. My Stalker can take actions in order to accomplish goals. Let's talk about those goals overall, though, and how the terrain has made it easier to see what we can potentially do and strategize. So first off, way back at the beginning of part number 1, we started down here in the bottom right-hand corner. You'll remember I peeked in this window here. It's important to note this is a window. It is not a door, so you cannot enter into that area. You could go down this way and, of course, use obstacles to your advantage, but I chose to just peek in, take a look, and then head north. We went all the way up to the top right-hand corner, way up there. There's an overlay card there that told us there was a loose board up against the building. We chose to rip that off. When we did that, allowed me another spot to peek in. It's really cool because the terrain actually has, although you can't see it, there's a long rip in the terrain, which kind of signifies like a board was covering it up. But basically, I looked in, saw what I saw, and interacted with the environment card there. Done. So we've covered 2 buildings in terms of trying to find Dalik, but we're still looking. And we've got 2 other options here. It's important to know for strategy, we have a door right here. That's the only point of access to this building, and then another door over here. Borsuk's going to start off with using a short action. It has a bonus move if I want to use it before or after the action, and a reroll if I choose to use that, but I won't be. I'm going to be using that to move. My action on my card for my Stalker says move Borsuk 1 space, and then place as many yellow noise markers in your final destination based on how many spaces you moved. So in this case, I'm going to be moving a total of 2 as I want to get that much further. I'll be using the bonus, adding it in. Let's get moving. Next up, I'm going to have Borsuk go ahead and use another short action. He's going to be doing a decoy action. You guys have seen this before. It's from a range 2. The great thing about a decoy is I can throw this and it doesn't matter about line of sight in terms of getting up over obstacles. Now, obviously you can't throw over a building or something, but you can throw over these obstacles right here, these walls essentially. So I could throw from range 2 into this red area over here in order to track noise in that vicinity, which might be a smart play seeing as I'm going to be heading off to the west. I don't really want attention drawn to the west side of the board. I want everyone to be staying on the east side for now. So the decoy is making noise where I threw it at range 2, so 1, 2, but I myself make noise as well, 2 noise in my space. After using my short action for the decoy to throw 3 noise in a particular direction, which was nice, I'm going to use a free point of movement as a bonus off that action to move 1 more space heading west. So at this point, I've done 2 full actions. Just to recap, we moved 2 with the very first one, doing some movement, dropped 2 noise, and that was it. That's all I wanted to do. Next up, used another short action in order to throw the decoy over to this area, placing 3 noise here, then used the bonus action to move 1 right here. We got 1 more long action left. And I'm going to go ahead and use it in order to get myself tucked away behind this wall. I want to find out what's back there. Remember that the narrative told us there's some kind of chest back there, so I'm going to go check it out. Just like that, I've gone ahead and taken the overlay card, the environment card, away. We're going to read it in a second. Of course, moving 2 spaces, 1 into here. There's another space here, which gets me tucked away behind the obstacle at the end of my turn, which is quite nice. In case the guards start turning around, looking around for me, I'm tucked away. But we get to find out now what is in this chest, as it's a free action. The card states, found it, a real treasure that could come in handy. Gain card E20A. You're going to gain some rifle ammo card from the loot deck and then shuffle that deck. You may perform the prepare action. There was, in fact, an AK-74S Vera in that box, which is awesome. On top of it, we got some rifle ammo too. Here you can see a comparison between what I have equipped and what I just picked up. So the MP5 here is a range of 3. This one has a range of 4. The passive ability on this one's awesome. When you deal a light wound, you actually deal a heavy wound instead as a passive. And you'll also notice the jam is actually a part of the equation with the MP5, whereas it doesn't show up here for the AK. So that's quite nice. A little bit of difference there with the shooting in terms of how they operate, but overall, I kind of like it. I'm thinking with this prepare action I have, I'll actually equip it. I'm definitely going to take advantage of that prepare action I got for free. I'm going to swap out my guns as well as my ammo. So the pistol ammo to the backpack. The MP5 that had 6 ammo goes to the backpack, but it keeps its ammo. And then of course the gun I just picked up already comes fully loaded. Plus I have rifle ammo as backup. Now, when I did my movement from here using keeping low long action, that got me there, and then I used a free action to go ahead and interact with the chest, I still have the ability to use my bonus action on the long action to move 1. So I'm going to do that to get right here in order to look through the window as there is an eye icon there. So Borsak moves out, up against the wall, and peeks into the room. An overturned desk, a half-rotten armchair, and bullet holes all over the walls. The overheating stove is sending puffs of smelly smoke. Lovely. If there are any unknown tokens in this building, we flip and resolve them. There aren't, which is great. Take card E13A and place it on the map. The card that is placed is an environment overlay card, and I'm going to have to be in this space in order to interact with it. It says to inspect a trap door here. It says under some old newspapers and cans of uneaten food, there's a trap door with a massive hinges and a lock. The lock is oiled, probably the only well-kept thing in the room. Someone is moaning down here. Could it be Dalik? And I've gone ahead and I removed the barrel so you guys could actually read the card. I'll just go ahead and place them back. We probably want to get inside that room. But now we're entering the enemy phase. The enemies are going to activate. We'll start by taking all the Overwatch tokens off the miniatures. Now it's time to activate the enemies. Northwest starting first. We're going to start with this individual right here. That bandit had no enemies in line of sight and in attack range. There's also no noise in range that reaches the space it started in, as the most high value ones are 2 or 3 and they're way too far away to actually impact or be heard by that bandit. So nothing there. So moving forward in the direction it was facing. And now we're going to go ahead and see if it can attack anything else. Again, can't see anything. We're going to roll the directional die here, see where it is going to be facing. It's going to be facing west. So it's going to stay facing the exact way that it is, which works quite nicely. Now we just got to see whether this individual is going to cause us any problems. The bandit here has nobody in line of sight and range, but it can hear noise. There is a spot with 2 noise right behind it, which is enough value-wise to make it to that individual. And the 3 noise across the obstacle there can also be heard by this individual. So which one will it go towards? It's going to go towards the noisiest space. So the bandit then moves from this position into this larger space here and 1 over, using its 2 move to try to get as close to the most noise as possible. And then of course it looks again to see if an enemy is in line of sight and attack range. There isn't anybody there. It would remove a red noise token if there was one in line of sight, but there isn't. So that is the end of that activation. So at this point, this individual is going to activate and is definitely going to be aware of the fact there's noise behind it. There's no enemy it can draw line of sight and range to, but the noise is the next thing it is going to notice. So the bandit will flip around and move right into the same space. After the move into the space with noise, the bandit is facing a wall, and so because of this, is going to turn 90 degrees to ensure that it's not facing a wall for this next check as to whether or not there's an enemy in line of sight and attack range. There isn't, so at this point we look for any red noise in line of sight, remove it, there is none. That's the end of that enemy's turn. With that squared away, let's go to the next enemy to activate. And it's going to be this one right here, which is going to go ahead taking a look for any enemies that can see in line of sight and range. It cannot see anybody, so it's going to move forward one space into the building. So this bandit ended up walking into the room, and of course this back wall it would have been facing would have been solid, and there's no door or window there, so it has to keep turning right until it can find one. It has a window right here, so it turns right looking south and looks again for any enemy to see, nobody to see, so no red noise token also to remove, and so the Overwatch token is placed. That's the end of that bandit's turn, and let's move on to this one right here. That bandit is going to go ahead because it can hear the noise of value 3 right there, and it's the most noise nearby. So it's going to move 2 spaces and be facing the noise, and there's nothing that it can see. Now, it's not up against a wall right now because there is a space that it couldn't reach. It only had 2 movement at most, so it got as close as it could. That's the end of its turn. Now, at this point, we're going to go ahead and place down an Overwatch token. The bandit, which was sitting right here, ended up going 2 spaces into the noise area. It was facing the wall, so I had to turn 90 degrees, which is this one right here, looking straight north. Put an Overwatch token down as there's no one to attack and no noise to take away in terms of red noise. That's going to be in that activation, so you can see the decoy worked really well. It got everybody bundled up into one area. Now, that could cause me problems on the way back if, in fact, Dalik is inside this building and I have to get back to my alternative escape route. Well, these guys might be in my way. This is where the guns blazing part might have to come into play. We'll see how this goes. I don't even know if Dalik is in this building at all. I have not played this to this point, so I have no idea if that's actually where he is. That's going to be part of the fun. But other than this, we still have 2 more enemies to actually activate. We have the S.T.A.L.K.E.R, which is quite interesting now because everyone has kind of cleared out of that area, and we have 1 bandit sitting right here. The S.T.A.L.K.E.R now activates. It can see north, it can see west, and it can see south. Currently, there's no enemies for it to attack, and it's also outside of the noise happening here, and you can now see how much fun it can potentially be if you're in the right place at the right time. You can be able to throw something like a decoy and actually have bandits, say, and a S.T.A.L.K.E.R maybe go into the same location based on the noise and then end up attacking each other. So you can kind of lead them into each other to actually have battles against one another and give you a break to maybe get away and distract them. Now, there's other cards in the game that allow you to play with these enemies. It can be quite a lot of fun strategy-wise trying to figure out how to make use of all these during gameplay. The S.T.A.L.K.E.R moves 1 position forward, and it's in a space where it can see down this corridor here, but it cannot see this individual right here. There's nobody here for it to see, and nobody going along these routes either. So at this point, we're going to roll the directional die and see which way this individual is going to be rotated. It is going to be south. And at this point, looking for anybody it can attack, there is nobody, no noise to deal with, so an Overwatch token will be placed in front of that S.T.A.L.K.E.R, and we're going to activate this bandit right here. The bandit inside the house can't see anything, but this is an opening, this window, so it's going to hop straight through the window. And the moment the bandit pops through the window, it's going to see the S.T.A.L.K.E.R coming towards the doorway and turn to face it. The bandit has turned and is going to open fire on the S.T.A.L.K.E.R. Now, this is the very first time that combat's being resolved inside of my playthrough, and that's because I've been able to keep my Stalker very quiet and silent the entire time through. But it's worth mentioning what you're about to see in terms of how combat is resolved is strictly only in an enemy-to-enemy combat. In other words, when you have AI within the game fighting amongst each other like the S.T.A.L.K.E.R and the Bandit, it's been streamlined in order to make sure that these interactions are quick and just make logical sense. When it gets into combat with the actual Stalker and an enemy, then you have full-fledged combat, which we'll go through in a future time frame. But at this point, we're just dealing with that streamlined combat. So I really want to emphasize what you're about to see is not how the combat system works generically across the entire game. So we have the Bandit here and the S.T.A.L.K.E.R. Basically, when you're resolving an enemy-to-enemy combat, you're going to take a look at the damage for the Bandit, which is 6. Then you're going to come over to the torso of the enemy it is shooting and see if it reaches the to hit, which it does. this. Then you're going to look inside of it to see what happened. Well, if you rolled at least 6 stars, and in this case, the damage of 6 is as if it rolled 6 stars. So it did. Then it's going to do a heavy wound. And if I roll a wound die, which I'm going to do in a moment, and get this symbol here or the double slash here, this Snork is dead. Otherwise, it's still alive. Let's find out what happens. It's still alive. Now, on the very bottom of the bandits card, it has an after attack effect. And if you want to take a look at the prior shot, you'll see it. It states on it, if possible, the bandit's going to move 1 space to the closest space with no line of sight to the attack target. In other words, it's going to get out of there. Once it takes a pot shot, it's going to try to get cover. So the bandit has gone ahead and walked 1 space this way. It's this one right here, but then it's supposed to turn around and face the space that it left. So I've done that. Place the Overwatch token down. The one thing to note too is that it could have also technically gone through the window and been out of line of sight, but as you can see based on how the Snork is facing, it's not going to purposely try and put itself into a dangerous position. We now move to the end turn phase where we check for any wound effects. We don't have any wounds. We resolve any unknown tokens we have. We don't have any to resolve. And we move into the booklet for the campaign to see what we're supposed to do. If we have any unknown tokens, we resolve them, ignoring that. Another Snork is going to come, placed on the exact same space, the exclamation mark, as we had before. This one will be coming in and will gain Overwatch. We're also going to place it facing west. It doesn't denote which way it's facing, but I'm assuming it will be the exact same facing direction as the original one. And then, of course, you can see here, remove all yellow and 1 red from each space as we've done in the past. All the noise tokens that are currently on the game board are going to be removed based on the rules we just read. With the noise all settled, we're ready to go back into the campaign booklet, look at the next left-hand side page. Worth noting the fact that we had an original evacuation route right here. Really glad that's not my only option, as we have an alternative escape route up top at the north side of the camp now. And I'm really glad we did, because these Snorks are going to become a serious problem, I think.
The incoming emission. Suddenly, a blood-red zigzag forks over the horizon and lights up the clouds. There is a foul, acrid taste in the air that makes me want to spit. It's the emission. It is only minutes away, ready to shred my body and boil my mind. I must hide. Yet none of the buildings in the camp can offer protection.
Now, in this case, at the bottom of the book, it says rules. Danger, Stalkers. The emission is coming. If there are no markers on page 23, place 3 markers on that page. I've gone ahead and shown the right-hand side. As it mentions here, we need to place 3 markers, which we've done here. Again, over time, what's going to happen is the storm is going to get closer. We'll be discarding a marker from the card, and if there's no markers on the card, you go to the next page. So this will be here. We'll be going to this end of turn for a number of rounds until those counters are gone. Now, looking around the camp in terms of the layout, it looks like I can make a run for it straight for the door, but I do have 1 bandit that's sitting right here that does draw line of sight and range up to 3. So that would be unfortunate, and would be bringing along a lot of red noise tokens if I did that, plus it has Overwatch. It's just not a good idea at this point to engage that enemy or get that enemy on our tail. So to keep things quiet still, we do have a window over here I'm going to make use of. I'm going to hop right through it, doing 1 movement and 2 movement. So in order to make that movement happen, let's go ahead here with a short action. We'll go ahead and flip that one over to get our 2 movement, and then when we're in this space, we can expect the trapdoor there and see what we find. And there he is. I kneel on the sticky floor and see him through the gap between the door and the floor. Curled up in the corner, he never stops moaning. Now, the key. We must unlock the trapdoor and get him out. It states, you may. If you have card E18A, which is a rusty key, we can unlock the door, which is an instant action. It has the bolt icon in the middle. We can take and resolve the rescuing Dalik card E19A and then discard this card. If we don't have this, then it looks like we're shooting the lock. Now, one correction I need to make, it doesn't impact gameplay whatsoever, but this individual actually moved on its last activation from here to here, and then went ahead and rolled the directional die and got west, which is facing a wall again, and it cannot face a wall. It would have to turn again at 90 degrees and not be facing a wall. So it would be like this, actually. It doesn't impact gameplay at all. It still can't see anything or do anything. It didn't impact me whatsoever, but just want to make sure it didn't actually end itself staring at a wall. I'm going to be a bit crazy. We're going to go ahead and try and shoot the lock. We could try and find the rusty key. We do have that important finding card that we got from earlier on, which just kind kind of give us a heads up that the spare key could be inside of an anomaly, an electro anomaly. We haven't found that yet, although we haven't been to all the buildings, so maybe it's in here. There's a generator right here. I'm not sure if it's somewhere in that vicinity, but that would make sense. At this point, being that I'm in there and I've got an alternative route to get out, I kind of want to just push for it. But the only sketchy thing is I have a long action left, which could give me up to 3 movement, and then a short action left for 2 movement. At best, I could get to here, which is not out, but it's not going to be outside of line of sight as these enemies start to bear down on the targeted area where all the red noise is going to come from when I shoot the lock and drop all that noise there. It's going to be coming from range 9 away. It's going to bring a whole bunch of fun towards me. Regardless of all that, I'm going to do it. Let's go ahead and spend an ammo cube here from our gun in order to do it. So we have 3 red noise dropping this location as we make a ton of noise shooting the padlock. Now that prior card that I just chose from actually had 3 options to choose from. One of them I almost disregarded right away because I want to be a little bit crazy right now and see if I can make a run for it. But one of them was to ignore what's going on there and kind of come back later. So in other words, you don't have to decide to do something here with Dalik. You could just leave him there and maybe try to find that rusty key, which was the other option to unlock it if I actually had the key, which I didn't. Instead, I decided to shoot it off. And when I did, we are now rescuing Dalik. So it says we're going to go ahead and flip over objective card E21A. We're also going to flip over both escape routes as I've got both of them uncovered, the one on the bottom right of the map and the one to the north. And then after that, we're going to flip this card. So we'll go ahead and reveal this one here, which is likely not the evacuation route I'll be taking. As a free action on this spot, we can get the hell out. We can remove our stalker from the map, and when there are no more stalkers on the map, the mission ends. We take and resolve E22A. And it's a little bit hard to read the one on the north side of the map, but the exact same thing written as an option up here. So I flipped over the mission objective card, which now checks off that we found and rescued Dalik. We need to escape from the bandit camp. So we're going to go ahead and flip this one over. As it states now, we've done everything on this rescue Dalik card. So let's see what it says on the opposite side. Important finding, Dalik. I got Dalik. Now I have to go back. Global. This is an information for all players. Keep this card next to the board as other cards might reference it later on. Our job at this point is to get the hell out, so let's go ahead and try and make that happen. We're going to go ahead with a long action here. This is going to be keeping low. I can move Barsec 2 spaces, but I'll add an additional one with the additional bonus here to get him through the window and on the move. Only 2 noises placed here based on the keeping low action on the card. As it states, the next one is going to be a short action, my final action with a move on it. I'll do a move action from his card, which is going to be 2 movement total. And we are very, very close to escaping. Now, one thing I noticed that I forgot was when I moved from here to this location, I didn't place 2 yellow tokens here. I got way too excited and flipped the card. So there actually is 3 red and 2 yellow here. Again, remember the maximum for the space is 3 red, 3 yellow. For the most part, it's not going to change much anyway because the amount of noise that's happening there is going to alert literally everything on the game board is within 9 spaces. We now move into the enemy phase. First things first, all the Overwatch tokens are being taken away. With the tokens gone, let's go ahead and activate this individual way over here. Now again, line of sight and range, nothing is of interest, but noise-wise, lots. So this individual is heading with its 2 movement towards the door where all the noise was coming from. Meanwhile, we have jumped out the window and ran in the different direction, which is great. There's nothing it can hit or attack. Line of sight wise, it can't remove any red noise based on where it's pointed. So that's going to end its turn. Overwatch tokens going in front. We're moving on to the next one. This individual right here is going to activate next. It is absolutely within range of the crazy amount of noise we made over near the lock. So it's going to turn that direction to move 2 spaces. And as soon as that enemy takes 1 of its 2 points of movement, it is going to be moved into a space where now it can draw line of sight to me and it's within range. So now at this point, you guys get to see how an actual attack resolves in terms of combat, not necessarily coming from my Stalker, which has its own quirks, but this time the AI or the enemy itself, the bandit in this case, making a shot against my Stalker and how I can defend against it. Now this bandit has a shotgun, so it's going to do a lot more damage up close and personal, and actually on the attack portion of the bandit shotgun card, it states that it's going to reduce damage by 2 for each space away from the target. And again, it's all based on range. So it wants to be up close and personal, and as we've only moved it 1 space and it targeted my Stalker, the additional space we're going to use for the AI to get into the same position as my Stalker. I'd move the bandit into the same space as my Stalker. The shotgun card here for the bandit states for the attack, place 1 red noise on the target space, so we're going to do that. And then we would lose 2 damage per range to the target. Not going to apply in this case. So it's going to be 6 damage coming at us. So we got 6 damage coming at us. We need to mitigate all 6 of it to stop a wound from going on us. We take a look at what we have for armor. We have a leather jacket. 2 defense means 2 blue dice. The best result you can get on a blue die for defense is 3 stars. We have 2 stars and 1 star. So the worst thing you're going to get is 1 star. But regardless, we need to get 6 in order to completely stop a wound from coming through. So chances are not too great on that. The other thing to mention, there's other ways to get blue dice. You can get them through anomalies. Particular artifacts will have them. Items may gain them, like basically different armor can bump that up too. So the more defense you have, the better. You'll also see with this one here, which is a completely different situation than what we find ourselves in right now. If I was in my player turn and I was moving, and then I moved and ended my movement in line of sight and range of an enemy after doing the long action of keeping low, I could add a blue die into the fray to help me out based on keeping low. But in this case, that has nothing to do with it. So we're just rolling these 2 blue dice and hoping for the best. We need 6. So here's how this pans out. I got a funny feeling we're going to see our first wound. Yep. So our Stalker's got his very first wound. It is a physical scratch. It says, I had worse, but it has no special effects. So that's a good thing. Taking up a wound slot, but not giving us any other passive negative effects. And this bandit is no fool. It's not going to stick around after it makes its attack. It has an after effect ability on the bottom, so if possible, it'll move a space away to be out of line of sight of the enemy. It's going to jump right inside of the building. And it will make sure that it's facing the space that it left. And just like that, it came into play, shot me, and ran away. This is certainly not looking good. I'm really hoping I can actually put up a defense here because as you can see, I've got a lot of enemies that are going to be activating. So let's activate the next one here. It'll be this individual here has an AK-74 moving 2. And again, this one was moving towards the noise until it spotted me, and it's going to go ahead and make a shot at me. So this one is going to also place a red token in my space. So again, lots of noise coming into my area, keeping me a key area of focus here. And eventually, this is going to be even more of a problem because yikes, it's going to actually change how much noise is the major area of noise. Currently, everybody is directed towards the noise of Dalik, but as the noise increases in my space due to gunfire, that could change how the rest of the enemies activate. So this is getting a little bit scary here. The bandit with the AK-74, as I've done, placed a red noise token. It's going to be doing a damage of 5 at me, which is a little nicer. I might be able to actually potentially block this. We're going to see right now if that actually works out. Let's grab 2 dice and see what we can pull off. I wish I had some more item cards that could help me with these defensive rolls, but I do not. So here we go. No way. There might be some regret creeping in terms of me trying to push my luck a little bit too hard there at the end, as I've just taken a physical deep wound. It says this wound cannot be dressed. In other words, it can't be bandaged and flipped over, or healed, which means removed during the mission. So I placed an Overwatch token on this one I've activated. I moved the individual, just shot me with the AK-74, 1 position out of line of sight, and an Overwatch token on that individual. Next one is coming in. The next character is activated using his 2 move to get closest to the loudest noise, which is still over here just by 1 red noise token. So it moved 1, 2, saw me, turned towards me. It's going to attack me. Good news is, using its shotgun, it gets -2 as it's 1 space away for range. So 4 damage coming at me. Let's roll the 2 blue dice and see if I can actually block something for once. We also have to place a red noise token in a second here. We got a block. We finally, our armor actually held us steady at 2 wounds. The only downside to this whole situation is now the most noise is also in this location and this location, but this is closer, so everybody is now focused on me. Let's continue activating people. We have this individual with an AK-74 who's going to go 1, 2, and again be within range of me. This individual is coming at me for 5 damage. Let's go ahead and roll 2 dice and see if we can block this. For the love, please be able to block this. No, that's going to be another wound. Our Stalker is now physically bleeding. It says end of the turn, you're going to roll a wound die. If you get to 2 slash, you're going to gain another face-up wound. That is not good. A single slash, gain face-down wound. This individual is now going to just go ahead and duck behind this wall to be out of line of sight after its attack, and it doesn't drop a red noise token as it already has maxed out the space. We have 3 red noise here and 2 yellow noise, so no more red noise tokens can be placed. And last but certainly not least, we have another individual coming in to take a shot at me. Another shotgun, so again, -2, based on it being 1 space away. We're going to roll, hoping our defenses can hold the line here. Otherwise, we're going to be at death's door, which is something I don't want to see happen. Let's roll and find out whether we are able to block this. We are just barely a 3 and a 1. I told you guys this was going to be a very aggressive move, and I think it paid off, but we're not completely out of the woods yet. We do have physical bleeding, which could certainly impact us at the end of turn. We'll talk more about that later on, but we still have 2 Snorks to activate as well as an individual over here, so we'll activate this person first. This individual is completely outside the action, but there is a window here, so skipping through the window, we're going to go ahead now and roll the directional die to see which way this person will be facing, and it's going to be a no change of direction in terms of where it's facing whatsoever, so right here, which is all good. Now we're going to go over to the Snorks. Well, do you want to hear something terrifying? The Snork is going to activate. That's right down here, and this individual can go 1, 2, 3, and then I am in range 3, and when a Snork is within range, it's going to go ahead and move straight into the exact position, the same space as the target of its attack. It's also going to place a red noise, but it cannot because that place is already maxed out. So it comes absolutely flying straight into the same space as me, which is pretty wild. We're going to go ahead and roll 2 blue dice right now. It's coming at me with 5 damage, by the way, so here's hoping I can resist this. I really need this. I don't want to be on death's door. Let's see what happens. No, it looks like we are going to get that universal marker. We had 3 wounds, we just gained another, and when you would gain another, you go ahead and place the universal marker right here, which has the skull icon. The next time we gain a wound, being on death's door now, it's going to come down to a die roll. If we get the wrong thing on the die, we're dead. Now, there is no after attack for the Snork. It loves to just stay in the exact position it's already in, which is nasty. We go to the next Snork activation, which is over here. It has a movement of 3. It will not be able to get within line of sight and range of me whatsoever. And that's legitimately the only positive thing that's happened to me in the last handful of activations. And it's all come down to this, as to whether or not my plan to go a little bit crazy at the end actually will pan out for me or be my demise. So we're at the end of turn for the round. We're going to check our wound effects. We have nothing here, nothing here, but we do have something here. End of turn, we're rolling the wound die. If we get 2 slashes, that's a face-up wound, which means we're then going to have to, based on the fact we have the universal marker here, roll the red die. If we get a skull on that die, we're dead. If we happen to gain a face-down wound, we're still going to be rolling that red die. So really, long story short, on the wound die roll here for the white one, we do not want to see any slashes whatsoever. So here we go. Cross your fingers, because I need all the luck in the world at this point. We got ourselves a blank, so nothing happening there. So now we move to the end of turn. It says to resolve any unknown tokens we have. We don't have any. A thunderclap happens, and of course, thunder and lightning, that is going to null out any type of other noise going on when that's happening. And so because of that, we don't have any yellow, and all red are going to be removed from the map. So all the noise is gone. Then radiation is going to spike. Each player is going to gain 1 radiation. Each player on a space without cover gains 4 instead. We are on a space without cover, so we're going up 4 ticks. And that puts us 1 away from a threshold where we'd be rolling a die if we had to, but we don't have to in this case. The storm's getting closer, so we discard a marker off of this, and of course the next page will be the last round of all things, but we're going to continue on this page until all the universal markers are gone, as I mentioned before, so that's going to do it for the end of turn. We now head into the next round. All our action tokens have been replenished. We have nothing to read in terms of the campaign log at this point, so we can dive right into taking actions, and I've got a Snork sitting in the exact same space as me, so maybe, seeing as you guys haven't seen me actually make any attacks, and seeing as noise really isn't an issue now as I'm going to be trying to move to get out of here, let's go ahead and try and blast this Snork away before I take off. So I'm going to go ahead with a long action here, which will give me a reroll, which can certainly be useful. And then, of course, I have a move afterwards if I want to just take off when I'm done. So first off, we're going to do a burst here, spending 3 ammo. So that's a good chunk of what I have. We can roll 4 red dice, and we can spread the successes between enemies in range. This would be great if we were attacking multiple people, but I'm really just targeting the one individual. When you make an attack on an enemy, you have to choose which part of the enemy you're actually aiming for. In this case, I'm going to go for the headshot, as I've got 4 red dice, plus my long action token gives me a reroll of dice, which could certainly be helpful if I don't get the 7 right off the dot. If I get the 7, this thing is dead. So let's see how this goes. That's enough. Bang on. 7 damage. That thing is gone. Now that shot is extremely loud. I had to place 3 noise in my space, which would certainly draw all kinds of attention if I was sticking around, but I'm not going to be. With the enemy now dead from this space, we're not going to go ahead and use the 1 move I had on my long action to move to the evacuation, the alternate route. Dalik stumbles and trips over a few times, his arms and knees trembling. God, he smells, but he's alive and nothing else matters. I help the poor bastard out, and soon we all quickly disappear in the morning mist. Bandits' shouts dimming in the distance. Congratulations, you have saved Dalik. Go to campaign book page 26. Not only is Dalik hurting, but Borsuk is really hurting as well, with a physical scratch, a physical deep wound, and physical bleeding all happening. He is on death's door as well. It's not looking good for him, but he managed to come out alive. You can see that when you go down the aggressive path, the game begins to close in on you. This is very reminiscent, if you understand Stalker, the video game, of what actually happens in that video game. If you make yourself known, you make yourself a target, a lot of enemies start bearing down on you. So trying to be silent when you can is definitely a good thing.
Get the guy out of here. Dalik is beyond exhausted. His face is pale, knees trembling, a trickle of blood running down his cheek. But he fights on. Step by step, the edge of the forest draws nearer and nearer. We quickly disappear in the morning mists, putting the camp behind us. Dalik is saved. I made it.
It states down here for rules. You win. Congratulations, you've saved Dalik. Place sticker number 1 from the sticker sheet. It should be in the mission box 1 of 1 on the zone map. Here's a look at the prototype campaign map, and just expect that the final version will have a lot more going on. But you can see down here, Rescue Dalik, mission 0101. That's the one we just completed. So we'll take the sticker and place it right over top. And with that, we've recorded that Dalik was saved. And that, my friends, is going to wrap up mission number 1 for Stalker, the board game from Awaken Realms. I really hope this helps you make an informed decision, seeing the game from beginning to end in mission number 1, all the different ins and outs. And we didn't do absolutely everything inside of mission number 1 either. There were anomalies that I never really dug into in terms of exploring them, going through the anomaly bag and pulling out tokens to try to find a combination of tokens that allow me to get an artifact out of them. If you're familiar with the Stalker universe, there's a lot to be had in interacting with those. However, they do pose the whole radiation and other effect kind of dangers, but they can be very beneficial. We also never took a look at what the generator did down here or what happens inside of this location, which I'm guessing, based on the fact that it kind of pointed towards it when we got to this room up here, there's likely a key involved somewhere in this area here, but I thought if I was to push and go down there, I could risk having a lot of attention coming to me and potentially my escape route being cut off faster than I wished. So I decided to go the noisy route, shooting my gun off like a crazy person, busting through the lock, getting Dalik out of there as quickly as I can, even if I technically risked my own life to do it. The final thing I want to mention is around the terrain. I'm a big fan of the terrain for this one. I really think it does help more quickly look at the game board and be able to decipher line of sight and range for the enemies and the Stalker. I found the second that I used this, when I did it off camera and then when I implemented it here in part number 2, you can see how much easier it is to actually recognize where spaces are within line of sight and range. I think it's a big enhancement on that front with the terrain. Now, if you don't have the terrain, you might be doing a little bit more second guessing as you're looking at stuff. And the other thing to note too is you get the added benefit, which is not necessary, but it's nice, of the immersion factor kind of jumping up a notch or two. That's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of anything throughout the series of Stalker, the board game from Awaken Realms. And again, hopefully this helps you make that informed decision. And as always, keep on rolling solo.